This story is titled, At My Father's Funeral. My brother demanded all the inheritance because he's the biological son, and I'm just my mom's child from a previous marriage. I said zero. Okay, I have renounced it, but never contact me for the rest of your life no matter what. He smirked and said, like I ever would. 3 months later, the inheritance is all mine. Hey everyone, I've been sitting on this story for a while, but recent events have made me realize just how wild it all is. I never thought my life would turn into something straight out of a messy family drama, but here we are. Let me lay it out for you, and maybe you can tell me if I handled it right or if I'm just as screwed up as my brother. So, here's how things got this messy. Growing up, my 30 female brother, Liam, 23 male, and I didn't exactly have a perfect family setup, but it wasn't a total disaster either. We had the same mom, but different dads. My biological father wasn't in the picture at all. According to mom, he took off when I was just a toddler, leaving her to raise me on her own. I don't have any real memories of him, just some old photos and vague stories about how he ran off with another woman. When I was about 4, mom met Anthony, who eventually became Liam's dad. Anthony was the opposite of my biological father in every way. He was steady, dependable, and genuinely kind. He treated me like his own from the start, which wasn't something he had to do, but he did it anyway. I remember how he'd read bedtime stories to me or take me out for ice cream, even before he and mom got married. When Anthony married my mom, he took things a step further and officially adopted me. At the time, I didn't fully understand what that meant, but looking back, it was a big deal. It wasn't just about paperwork, it was a statement. He didn't have to do it, but he wanted to make it clear to everyone, especially me, that I was his child in every way that mattered. I remember the day mom told me about the adoption. She sat me down and explained that Anthony had talked to a lawyer to make it official. I was only a little kid at the time, but I still remember her saying, "This is Anthony's way of saying you're his no matter what." From that point on, Anthony never treated me like the kid from a previous marriage. He was at every school play, every parent-teacher meeting, and every little milestone in between. He would tell me, "It doesn't matter whose blood runs in your veins, you're my daughter." That always stuck with me, especially as I got older. Knowing that Anthony chose me when he didn't have to made me feel like I belonged in a way I hadn't before. It's why, even when Liam started to tear me down later, I never doubted Anthony's love for me. A couple of years later, Liam was born. I was excited to have a little brother. I didn't care that we technically only shared one parent. To me, he was just my baby brother, and I loved him. Growing up, we had a pretty normal sibling relationship. We'd play together, fight over toys, and bond over cartoons on Saturday mornings. For those first few years, things were good. But then everything changed when tragedy struck. I was 17, getting ready for college, and Liam was in middle school when mom passed away in a car accident. It was sudden and unexpected. For me, losing mom was like losing my safety net. She was the one who always knew what to say to make things feel okay, no matter how bad they got. After she was gone, the house felt colder, quieter, like the life had been drained out of it. Anthony tried his best, but there were things only mom could do, like the way she'd hum softly while folding laundry, or the way she'd somehow convince Liam and me to stop fighting without ever raising her voice. Without her, it felt like we were all just trying to figure out how to function again, and none of us got it right. Her death hit all of us hard, but for Liam, it was a breaking point. At the funeral, Liam screamed, "Why did mom have to die? It should have been you. Nobody would care if the step-sibling was gone." Hearing that knocked the wind out of me. I felt any bit of affection I still had for him just vanished at that moment. I wanted to clap back at him so badly, but I stayed silent. But Anthony, who was normally calm and level-headed, lost it. He scolded Liam in front of everyone, something I'd never seen him do before. But no amount of yelling could undo the damage. From that moment on, my relationship with Liam was never the same. After mom's death, Liam changed. He started blaming me for everything. If something went wrong, it was somehow my fault. I tried to chalk it up to misplaced anger. He was young, and losing mom so suddenly must have been overwhelming. I sometimes wondered if Liam's bitterness started before we even realized it. There were little things, like the way he always had to win, even in the smallest arguments, or how he'd get extra clingy with Anthony whenever I got praise for something. Once, during a family dinner, Anthony complimented me for acing a school project, and Liam immediately spilled his juice all over the table, then burst into tears about how nobody loved him. At the time, I thought he was just being dramatic. Now I see it as a preview of what was to come, a need to constantly be the center of attention, and a refusal to share the spotlight, even with family. I guess it was easier for him to paint me as an outsider than to deal with his own insecurities. But as time went on, his resentment didn't fade. It grew. Liam started throwing little jabs at me, especially about the fact that we had different dads. Liam started throwing little jabs at me, especially about the fact that we had different dads. He'd say things like, "You're not really part of this family," or "You're just the stepkid." At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just his way of processing grief. But as he got older, it became clear that he genuinely believed I didn't belong. By the time Liam hit his late teens, his attitude became unbearable. He was constantly trying to one-up me, whether it was about grades, jobs, or anything else. When he failed to get into his dream high school and later his top-choice university, he took it personally. Meanwhile, I had graduated college and landed a decent job at the city office. Instead of being happy for me, Liam saw it as competition. The one thing Liam could cling to was the fact that he was Anthony's biological son. He started flaunting it like it was some kind of badge of honor. "I'm Dad's real son," he'd say, as if that somehow made him better. It was exhausting. Anthony, for his part, never treated us any differently. To him, I was his daughter in every way that mattered. But Liam saw things differently. He acted like I was stealing something from him. Anthony's love, attention, whatever. As soon as I could, I moved out. I needed space from Liam and all the negativity he brought with him. I didn't hate him, but I was tired of constantly being dragged into his issues. When I visited Anthony, I'd coordinate my visits so Liam wouldn't be around. It wasn't worth the drama. Liam, on the other hand, stayed home with Anthony all through college. He framed it as being loyal or responsible, saying things like, "I'm here to take care of Dad." But let's be real, Anthony didn't need taking care of. Liam just didn't want to leave the comfort of home. When Liam graduated college and landed his first job, he called me, not to reconnect or anything, but to brag. "I got a job at a way better company than your little city office gig," he said. "Must be Dad's genes, right? Guess it pays to be the real son." I just rolled my eyes. Liam had always been competitive, but now he was straight up obnoxious. I decided then and there to keep my distance even more. Life's too short to deal with that kind of negativity. But then Anthony passed away suddenly. Losing him was like losing my anchor. I'd always taken his steady presence for granted. But now, without him, I felt unmoored. But I had no clue that his death was going to kick off a whole mess that would take my already rocky relationship with Liam to a new low. Anthony's funeral was supposed to be a time to mourn and say goodbye, but of course Liam had to make it about himself. From the moment he walked in, late as always, I knew this wasn't going to go smoothly. He didn't even bother apologizing or acknowledging the people who had been waiting for him to arrive. Instead, he strolled in like he owned the place. Anthony's passing had hit me hard. He wasn't just my stepdad. He was my dad in every way that mattered. I handled most of the arrangements myself because Liam either couldn't be bothered or thought it wasn't his responsibility. He showed up on the day of the funeral like a guest instead of family. As the service ended and people started to leave, Liam finally decided to make his big move. While I was thanking some of the attendees for coming, Liam grabbed my arm and said, "We need to talk about Dad's inheritance. Not even a 'how are you holding up' or a moment of reflection about Anthony's life. Straight to the money." I pulled Liam aside, away from the last few guests lingering around, not because I cared about sparing him embarrassment, but because I didn't want a full-blown scene at Anthony's funeral. "What now?" I asked, already annoyed and bracing for whatever garbage he was about to spew. He leaned against the wall with that smug grin he always wore when he thought he was outsmarting everyone. "It's simple," he said, like he was explaining math to a toddler. "I'm Dad's real kid, so obviously, everything he left should go to me." I blinked, half wondering if he was serious. This was low, even for Liam. "You're kidding, right?" I asked. "Nope," he shot back, crossing his arms. "You're not even his real kid. It'd be ridiculous for you to get anything. You're just a step-sibling. It would seem greedy of a stepson to ask for money. You're not actual family." I didn't let him see how much that stung. Anthony had been my dad since I was little, legally adopting me and treating me like his own flesh and blood. There was never a moment where he made me feel like I wasn't his daughter. But none of that mattered to Liam. To him, biology was the only thing that counted. "You're serious?" I asked, trying to figure out how he'd twisted this logic in his head. "Of course I'm serious," he said with a sneer. Dad would have wanted his real son to inherit, not some outsider. That word, outsider, hit harder than I wanted to admit. Liam had always found ways to remind me that in his eyes, I wasn't really part of the family. I knew if I refused, he won't back up and I start a conflict I don't want to be in, and I wasn't about to waste my time fighting with him. Anthony's death was already tearing me up inside, and I wasn't about to let Liam drag me down further. "All right," I said, keeping my voice calm even though I was boiling inside. "You can have it all, every last bit of it. But here's the deal. You never contact me again. Ever. Not for money, not for help, not for anything. We're done." Liam's grin stretched wider. Like I'd ever want to contact you, he said, practically laughing. I stared at him for a second, feeling both anger and pity. He might have thought he won, but he had no idea how this was all going to blow up in his face. Good, I replied. Then we're agreed. I walked away, leaving him standing there. Part of me wanted to tell him the truth, that Anthony had legally adopted me, which meant I had every right to half of the inheritance. But I didn't. I didn't want to stoop to his level or turn this into an even bigger mess. The next day, I went straight to a lawyer to begin the process of renouncing my share of the inheritance. The lawyer seemed surprised when I told him my plan. Are you sure about this? He asked. Positive, I said. I don't want anything to do with it. The lawyer explained that because Anthony had officially adopted me, I was entitled to an equal share, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be free from all the drama. When the paperwork was finalized, I called Liam to let him know. I've renounced my share, I said. It's all yours now, enjoy. I could hear the smugness in his voice as he replied, Good. About time you did the right thing. I didn't bother responding. I just hung up and tried to put it all behind me. I thought that would be the end of it, that Liam would take his newfound wealth and leave me alone for good. I gave him exactly what he wanted, the entire inheritance, and made it clear we were done. No contact, no drama, just two people living separate lives. But of course, he found a way to drag me back into his mess. 3 months after the funeral, my phone started blowing up with calls and texts. Guess who? At first, I ignored it. I'd told him not to contact me ever again, so I figured he'd eventually get the message. But Liam was relentless. After the 15th missed call, I caved and answered, mostly to make it stop. What do you want, Liam? I said, not even trying to hide my annoyance. I need money, he said, his voice strained. Dad had debts. I laughed. Debts? What are you talking about? Turns out, Anthony had a few outstanding loans. Nothing crazy, just some manageable stuff like a car loan and a small mortgage. Liam, of course, had burned through all of Anthony's savings in record time. Now he was stuck trying to keep up with payments he clearly hadn't planned for. Why is this my problem? I asked. It's not just the debts, Liam continued, ignoring my question. There's interest, penalties. It's snowballing, Morgan. I can't keep up. You wanted all of it, remember? I shot back. This is exactly what you asked for. Liam's tone changed. He went from pleading to accusatory in a heartbeat. You knew about this, didn't you? You pushed all the debt onto me because you're jealous I'm Dad's real son. Oh, the nerve. First of all, I said, trying to stay calm, I didn't know anything about the debts until you brought them up just now. Second, I told you to disappear from my life. So why are you calling me now? He started rambling about how unfair it was, how he shouldn't have to deal with this, how I should have warned him. I didn't stick around to hear the rest. Figure it out, Liam, I said before hanging up. I thought that would be the end of it, but it was the start. A week later, Liam called again. This time, he tried a different tactic. Instead of accusing me, he went full-on victim mode. He admitted he'd spent all of Anthony's savings right after the funeral. According to him, he used some of it to pay off the mortgage and renegotiated the car loan to lower payments. But the rest? Who knows? Trips? Gadgets? A new wardrobe? So, what do you want from me, Liam? I asked, already knowing where this was going. I need $8,000 to pay off the last of the debts, he said, like it was the most reasonable request in the world. I couldn't believe the audacity. You blew through the inheritance in 3 months and now you want me to bail you out? I'm desperate, Morgan, he said. If I can just clear this debt, I'll be fine. Yeah, well, that's not happening, I replied. Why not? You're supposed to be my sister. That's when I lost it. You've spent years treating me like garbage, Liam. You called me a stepchild, an outsider, not part of the family, and now you want me to help you? Get real. But Liam didn't give up. A few days later, he showed up at my workplace. I didn't even know how he found out where I worked, but there he was, waiting for me in the parking lot during my lunch break. Morgan, please, he started, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. I'll do anything. Just lend me the money. I sighed. Liam, I'm not giving you a dime. This is your mess. But I've already renegotiated the car loan, he protested. It's only $5,000 now, and the house is paid off. I just need a little more to clear the rest. That sounds like you're already doing fine, I said. So what's the problem? He hesitated, avoiding eye contact. That's when it hit me. There was more to the story. What aren't you telling me, Liam? After some prodding, he finally came clean. I spent too much of the savings on stuff. I went over budget, borrowed money from a friend to make up for it, and now he's threatening me. If I don't pay him back soon, I'm screwed. There it was. This wasn't just about Anthony's debts. Liam had dug himself into a deeper hole with his own reckless spending, and now he was panicking. You're unbelievable, I said. This is exactly why I wanted nothing to do with the inheritance. You can't handle responsibility, Liam. You never could. I know I messed up, okay? But you can help me fix it. Just $8,000, Morgan. That's all I need. When he reached out his hand, just give me the money, he said. Begging, like I'd just hand him the money right then and there? I slapped his hand away. There's no way I'm paying, I said firmly. This is your fault. You blew through the money, you borrowed more, and now you're paying the price. I'm not your safety net. Liam glared at me, rubbing his hand after I slipped it, his face turning red with frustration. Why can't you just help me? Is it because we're only half siblings? Is that it? Stepchildren are the worst, always acting like they're entitled to everything when they're nothing but outsiders. His words stung, but I wasn't about to let him see that. I felt my stomach churn, but I kept my expression cold. You've treated me like I'm nothing for years, Liam, and now you want my help? You're pathetic. Number not happening. I turned on my heel, got into my car, and started the engine. Before pulling away, I rolled down the window just enough to get the last word in. Don't ever show up here again. If you do, I'll call the police. Oh, and by the way, good luck digging yourself out of the hole you're too stupid to stop digging. Then I drove off, leaving him standing there, red-faced and fuming. But as I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, something about the way he stood there, seething, sent a chill down my spine. I could feel it in my gut. Liam wasn't going to let this go. It felt like he was already plotting some way to get back at me. That's where I am now. I'm bracing for whatever ridiculous or vindictive move he tries to pull next. I'll keep you guys posted. Something tells me this is far from over. Update 1. Hey everyone, here's the update I promised. I wish I could say Liam took the hint and moved on, but of course that would have been too easy. If anything, things went from bad to worse, and honestly, I should have seen it coming. The guy wasn't going to just let it go. Not after the way I shut him down. It started small. I started getting strange messages on my social media. They were from accounts with no profile pictures and random usernames. Stuff like, "You think you're better than us?" and "Family doesn't turn their back like you did." At first, I ignored them, assuming they were spam or bots. But the tone felt personal, like whoever was behind them knew me. I had a sinking feeling Liam was pulling the strings, but without proof, there wasn't much I could do. Then, he'd call the city office where I worked, asking to speak with me. At first, the receptionist didn't think much of it. She assumed he was just a concerned family member trying to get in touch. She'd leave me messages like, "Your brother called again? Should I tell him to try later?" I brushed it off, figuring he'd eventually get the message and stop. But Liam doesn't know how to take a hint. The calls started coming daily, sometimes multiple times a day. It became clear he wasn't just trying to reach me. He was deliberately harassing my coworkers. One day, the department manager called me into her office. She looked annoyed as she handed me a sticky note with Liam's name on it. "Morgan, your brother's been calling nonstop," she said, clearly annoyed. "He's even accused you of hiding from him. What's going on?" I was mortified. Liam wasn't just being a nuisance. He was actively trying to sabotage my reputation at work. I apologized profusely and assured her I'd take care of it. I blocked his number, thinking that would slow him down, but I should have known better. Instead of backing off, he doubled down. As I explained the situation to the man, one of my coworkers, who overheard the conversation, chimed in with a smirk. "Sounds like your brother needs a hobby," she said, trying to lighten the mood. "Maybe we should get him one of those paint-by-numbers kits. Or, I don't know, a therapist." I chuckled despite myself, grateful for her attempt to diffuse the tension. She was one of the few people who knew the full story, and she'd been a quiet support system through all of Liam's antics. Despite all the tries from me to cut Liam off, he still decides to escalate. One morning, he showed up at my office, unannounced and uninvited, not quietly waiting in the parking lot or lurking around the building. No, that would have been too subtle for Liam. He stormed straight to the front desk and started yelling at the receptionist. "I need to speak to Morgan, now!" he barked, his voice echoing through the lobby. "She's been ignoring me, and I won't leave until I see her." The poor receptionist tried to calm him down, but Liam wasn't having it. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted. "I'm her brother. Family comes first, right? Or is this place too busy kissing Morgan's ass to understand that?" As I watched him from the glass doors of my office, I felt a mix of embarrassment, anger, and disbelief. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay composed. How did it come to this? The little brother I used to help with homework was now yelling at my coworkers, dragging my life into chaos. When security finally escorted him out, I ducked into the bathroom, locked the door, and let out a shaky breath. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. What if I've handled this all wrong? I whispered to myself. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Maybe I should have done something differently. But then I remembered his smug, entitled face and reminded myself, This wasn't my mess to fix. She called me in a panic, and I could hear him yelling in the background. I didn't even bother walking to the front. I called security instead. When the guards arrived, Liam refused to leave. He made a huge scene, shouting about how I was turning my back on family, and how I was too high and mighty to help him. "You think you're better than me, Morgan?" He sneered as the guards escorted him out. "Just because you've got some pathetic little government job doesn't mean you're anything special." Before leaving, he turned to glare at me through the glass doors. "This isn't over. You're going to regret this." I was beyond furious. Liam had crossed a line by involving my workplace in his nonsense. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was affecting my job, my co-workers, and my reputation. The next day, my manager called me into her office again. She was polite but firm. "Morgan, we need to address what happened yesterday," she said. "This kind of disruption can't happen again." "I completely understand," I said. "It won't happen again." And I meant it. That evening, I filed a police report against Liam for harassment. I didn't want to, but at this point, he left me no choice. The officer I spoke to was sympathetic and took my statement seriously. "If he shows up at your workplace again or tries to contact you, let us know immediately," he said. I thought that might finally put an end to it, but Liam had one more trick up his sleeve. A few days later, he sent an email to the entire office. The subject line read, "The truth about Morgan," and the email was full of lies. He accused me of stealing from the inheritance, abandoning my responsibilities as a sister, and even attached random screenshots of bank statements to make it look like I'd taken money that wasn't mine. My manager called me into her office again, this time with HR. She slid a printed copy of the email across the desk. "Morgan, we need to talk about this," she said. I was shaking with anger as I read through the email. "This is all lies," I said, my voice trembling. "He's just trying to ruin my life because I won't give him money." HR assured me they believed me, but it was clear the situation had escalated too far. I forwarded the email to the police and followed up on my harassment report. They issued Liam a formal warning, letting him know that any further contact with me or my workplace would result in charges. That warning must have shaken him, because for the first time in months, Liam went silent. No more calls, no more emails, no more showing up unannounced. I finally felt like I could breathe again. But the damage was done. My reputation at work had taken a hit, and even though my coworkers were supportive, I could tell some people were still wary. HR offered me the option to transfer to a different branch, and I took it without hesitation. I packed up my desk, said goodbye to my team, and moved to a quieter location where I could focus on rebuilding. He didn't stop there. "Last week, I got a call from my bank. We need to verify a recent account update request," the representative said. My stomach dropped. I hadn't made any requests. When I pressed for details, they told me someone had tried to change my contact information and security questions. The request had come from a phone number I didn't recognize, but the representative mentioned the person had claimed to be me. My mind went straight to Liam. It had to be him. No one else would even think to pull something like this. I reported the incident immediately, and the bank flagged my account for fraud. Liam might have thought he could control me through his antics, but in the end, I'm the one who walked away stronger. He's lost not just my help, but any shred of respect I might have had left for him. If things stall here, I'll post another update. But knowing Liam, this might just be the calm before the next storm. We'll see. Final update. Hey guys, I thought I'd give you all an update on how things have been since everything went down with my brother Lee. If you've been following my story, you know it's been a mess. After the whole inheritance drama, the harassment, and finally having to call the police on him, I've been trying to move on and rebuild my life. It's been quiet, which is exactly what I needed. It's been a few months now, and Liam has stayed out of my life, probably because the cops made it crystal clear that one more stunt would land him in serious trouble. Honestly, I never thought it would come to this. I'd always hoped we could at least be civil, even if we were never close. But after everything he pulled, I've realized holding on to that hope was just setting myself up for disappointment. Liam's latest actions left him in a bad spot, and I've heard bits and pieces about what's happened to him since. Apparently, after burning through the inheritance in record time and alienating everyone around him, things finally caught up to him. One of the people he borrowed money from, a so-called friend, ended up suing him. He barely managed to avoid court-ordered consequences by agreeing to a long-term repayment plan, but he's struggling to keep up. He's also still stuck with Anthony's car loan. From what I've heard, he's been falling behind on those payments too, and is constantly scrambling to make ends meet. A mutual acquaintance, someone I didn't even realize was still in touch with Liam, mentioned that he's now living in a cramped apartment, barely scraping by. Apparently, he's even reached out to extended family members, begging for help. Surprised no one's biting. Turns out being rude and entitled doesn't inspire a lot of sympathy. As for me, life's been quiet, and I mean that in the best way possible. Transferring to a smaller branch office was the right move. It's a tight-knit team, the work is fulfilling, and the people here are great. Most importantly, they don't know anything about Liam or the chaos he caused, which is such a relief. I can just show up, do my job, and not have to deal with drama bleeding into my professional life. I think about Anthony a lot. Losing him still stings, and I don't think that'll ever fully go away. But I know he'd be proud of me for standing my ground and refusing to let Liam drag me down. Anthony always told me to value integrity and protect my peace, and that's exactly what I've done. The biggest thing I've realized through all of this? I don't miss Liam at all. Cutting him out of my life was the best decision I've ever made. There's a kind of freedom that comes with letting go of toxic relationships, even if they're with family. For so long, I felt like I had to keep trying for the sake of family. But now, I feel like a weight's been lifted. A friend recently asked me if I'd ever consider reconciling with him, and my answer was immediate. No. Liam had countless chances to treat me with respect, and he blew every single one. I'm not going to put myself in a position where he can hurt me again. Last I heard, Liam was still trying to track me down. He even called one of my old coworkers, fishing for information about where I'd gone after the transfer. Thankfully, my old office didn't give him anything, and they let me know what happened right away. I've taken extra precautions since: new phone number, updated privacy settings, the whole 9 yards. The old me might have felt sorry for Liam, but not anymore. He made his choices, and now he's living with the consequences. I don't owe him anything, and I'm done feeling guilty for prioritizing my own peace of mind. At the end of the day, life's too short to let someone else's chaos control yours. I've finally found peace, and I'm not letting anyone, especially Liam, take that away from me. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. I hope this update gives you some closure because it's definitely given me mine.